So hello and welcome. This is Erica Glessing. I'm joyful to have with us today Laura Hackel. Hi, Laura.
Hi, Erica. Thanks for having me.
Laura has a gift with healing and a gift with energy. She works a lot with different modalities for healing. She wrote a beautiful piece in the book, I'm Having It, which came out last year. And this year we're working on this project on releasing judgment. And Laura, just kind of like maybe give us a minute of tell us who you are a little bit, and then kind of why you jumped in and had some messages for this releasing judgment.
Sure. So actually an artist, an energy healer, and a writer, as Erica said. And one of my favorite things to use is the crystal bowls to heal people. So I work in vibrational energy. But one of the things that got me so excited about releasing judgment is that seems to be one of my life lessons. It's this funny thing where if I catch myself judging someone, and sometimes even when I don't catch myself, you're in the supermarket and somebody's child is screaming and you go, oh, can't they control their child? And then the next day I'm in the supermarket and my child is screaming. No, you cannot control your child. I'm so sorry. So the universe keeps connecting to me. Every time I have a judgment, it keeps coming back to me. So every time now I'm getting good at recognizing when I have them because I don't want that back.
Wow. I think that's interesting too, when you break it down like that. One of the things I asked people to do in releasing judgment in the book was to do some practical stories and some practical applications of how it messes up your life. And people think that judgment is about how you judge others. And my experience is it's just a completely limiting factor on me.
Yeah.
It really doesn't even affect most of the people I'm judging.
Yeah. So I get from an energetic perspective, I see that when you judge someone, they can feel that energy sometimes. So you're saying the energy that you don't accept them, but you're right. It's rooted in you don't really accept who you are. And I love this analogy that from the time we're born, people are telling us what it's okay for us to do and what it's not okay for us to do. And every time they tell us something, it's like they're giving us a coat to put on. We're putting on a coat, and that coat is like, okay, good girls look like this. So you put that coat on, and then you get, kids are to be seen and not heard, and you put that coat on, and you keep putting on all these coats, and those coats are really judgments about yourself. So that you're not, it could be that your essence is to be bubbly and sparkly and to light up the room every time you walk in. Well, if you have this coat on called you should be seen but not heard, you're at war with yourself all the time. So you're not showing up as full as you can be in the world. I view it as like these judgments are like coats we give ourselves and we give others. And that the process is taking off the coats will really get you to know who you are in the world, who you are, not because you're going to please somebody or not because somebody says you should be, but it's like, who were you born to be?
I'm going to ask you, so I'm going to throw you a wrench because I know you so well. When your son chose to go into, at a very young age, to become a professional, tell us a little bit about that and then what that did with you, because I feel like it's an awesome real life example. So tell us about your talented son and just a snapshot of that, because really I think you can walk the talk in this area.
Absolutely. My kids are another one of those areas where there's such a lesson in judgment. And in order for me to take a stand for my kids, I have had to stand in the face of what's not popular or what people think is crazy and a whole bunch of judgment. And what Erica's referring to is that my middle son decided when he was 14 that he wanted to become a professional freestyle skier. And to do that, he needed to go to school not in Boston where we lived, but at Mount Hood in Portland, Oregon. So 3,000 miles away.
I got chills.
Yeah. And it was like, oh my gosh. And I so wanted to support him. And it's so interesting because it's such a passion of his, and the setup was perfect for him. He's dyslexic, so he could ski every day, and he could go to school online, which would support all of him. And so it's like, how could you tell him no? And we said, okay, we're in, because people are like, you're crazy. And I'm like, I cannot get him to go to college if he does not finish high school. And if it's high school, then that's great. I'm all in. And it was painful. I'm not saying it wasn't painful, but how many, good family members, relatives, have said, couldn't you just convince him to ski on weekends?
I know, right?
You have just made it a hobby. Really, there is no money in the professional skiing world.
Judgments.
Right.
Yeah.
And judgments say more about, like, what I learned is the judgments are how they view the world. Right. And how I view the world is, this kid, if he's going to go out there and be clear that that's what he wants to do, then I'm going to support him. And when he calls because he's in a hospital somewhere and he needs help, I'm going to support him. And if he says, I want to go back out and ski, I'm going to support him. Yeah. And, it required me not listening to a lot of people that were like, well, you're going to make him quit, aren't you? Well, he just got hurt. And you're like, he could get hurt doing anything that's traditional and normal. He's got a talent and a passion, and that's what we're going to feed. And so, and the interesting thing is, because we talked about these judgments often come and they hurt you. So what's interesting to see is also, it's like I got the kids I got, because to be a stand for them, I had to stand in that judgment. And that was the gateway for me to be able to stand for myself too, because that's the lesson that I was learning in life, that I was never straight for standing for myself.
Yeah.
I had to model that to be able to get my kids where they needed to be.
I moved my daughter to a different high school mid-year this year, and it was really fascinating because there was a lot of judgment around that, and a judgment on making a new choice, and judgment around moving the kids mid-year, all these judgments. And it was fascinating what happened, because mid-year they actually start school and it's obvious they're new, like a new incoming freshman it wouldn't be. So they actually get a lot more attention and a lot more help from the teachers mid-year. Who knew? Also, I'm in an area where the schools are just like off the charts, hard to get into. You normally have to show like 7 pieces of documentation to show. I mean, it's like you own your home, your insurance, not just your PG&E, plus your cable, plus it's like seriously like to prove that you live in that school. Well, mid-year they're really different because they're just kind of hanging out. They're not processing 400 kids, and so they're like, "Oh, you can email me the PG&E bill when you get your first one." They're like, "That's fine." Like, oh my gosh, they just like, the process was so easy, and then the kids have had like no trouble adjusting. Like they're just doing great. And I just kept listening. It was interesting because I even face the judgment now when I'll go out with the other moms of having moved my kids. But the kids' spirits were calling for the change super loud.
Right.
And like you said, you're that person's mom. Yeah. You're that person's mom, and my hat's off to you for letting them choose the skiing route at 14. I have a hockey player, but it doesn't impact it like that yet. So hats off to you, Laura, for that. I loved your chapter in the book on the gift of judgment. I also resonated with the it being a life lesson. I had an interesting insight in one of these interviews I did where I was judged harshly when I was a child. Harshly. So I thought later, about, because it isn't this lifetime, but it was like, at what point was I the judge?
Right.
And I think that's what you were telling me, is like you're seeing that reflected. And maybe just explain that a little bit more about that. It almost feels like a boomerang effect.
Yeah. So it's so it's this thought that says if we're judging somebody else, it means we wouldn't allow ourselves the freedom to ever consider that, because we have it so locked in our brain, like this is the way it has to be. And so if you imagine, it's like we're going through life with blinders, right? And going through life with blinders is like not nearly as much fun as going through life going, ooh, what's calling to me now? Like, what do I want to do next? What are all the possibilities, right?
Well, let's jump to some of that, because you really do, in the book, The Power of Releasing Judgment, you share some really awesome tools. So why don't you just take us on like one or two things we can do to start shifting this? Because in the book, you're super clear at sharing what people can do.
Yeah, so the first trick is to figure out when you're in judgment, right? So the ways that you know that you're in judgment is if you find yourself complaining, then you're in judgment. And the reason why you're in judgment is because you have a should. Like if you're complaining that the line was 10 minutes, you think it should have been 2 or 1 or not at all.
Oh, gotcha.
Right? So a complaint is just life is not showing up the way it should for you. And so notice when you're complaining, and it's almost like just notice it and then let it go and say, okay, so how is it showing up? Right? Because if you had been living in the story of moving the kids mid-year, that could be really, really tricky. What are you showing up for your kids?
Yeah.
It would have been what you knew, which is they're calling for this move.
Right.
So what showed up was all the ways that it was easy.
Yeah.
So if you find yourself complaining, you're in judgment. So just, practice figuring out what you're judging.
Wow.
And if you find yourself thinking that it should, like if you're using should in a sentence, I should be doing this, or he should do that. That's
right.
Right? It's like, okay, we should pick up the socks at night. Why should that happen? I might want my kids to pick up their dirty clothes at night, but the should brings that energy of judgment into it. And what I found with my kids is you can't really have a connected conversation with them when you are in judgment. And that's true of anybody. If you're judging them, you can't connect in with them. So having a conversation with my kids about the socks that they would leave on the floor never went well. Well, still on the floor. So I was upset. They were on the floor. The dishes were banging in the kitchen. The minute I thought, okay, so what's happening? The socks are on the floor. Okay, that doesn't work for me. So the minute I just accepted that socks get on the floor every night, I could have a conversation with the boys and say, okay, so if the socks are on the floor in the morning, or if your video equipment is on the floor in the morning, it's mine for 48 hours, and you have to earn it back. So pick it up. Like, I gave them some way that I expected them to do it, and I could have that conversation because I wasn't mad in that moment.
Right. You weren't furious. Right.
Before, leaving the socks on the floor was like, do you think I'm your maid? Am I trying to pick up after you? Like, all the thoughts I had were around.
Right.
And then the third trick about sort of recognizing judgment and shifting is recognizing when you say something not good about yourself. When you find yourself in judgment about yourself, like, oh, I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't, like, I'm so dumb, or I should know better, or like in that instant.
Yeah.
Immediately shift into finding what are 3 things that you love about. Like
that takes discipline.
It takes discipline. So start with 1 if it's too hard. 1 to combat it, because you're basically saying, okay, well, I love, that I have a bubbly personality, or I love that I like my socks to be mismatched, or I love that this is a strength that I have. It's sort of like somebody just did this big study, and I loved it because it was talking about the mindset of the people that have a lot of money. And it had to do with, they did the thing they do best. They didn't try to grow the areas that they don't excel in. And how many of us say, oh, you know, I'm not really good at that. I should get better at it. Like, release that. Give yourself permission to be good at what you're good at. And
just shut off.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm doing all this very brave stuff of bringing in administrative help this month, March. So I just I hired 2.
Awesome.
So I have one that's like a person nearby who's young, who's going to be doing some of the easier tracking stuff. And then, but she's around because I need her to be on my files.
Right.
And so I wanted someone physically around. And then I have someone remote who's going to help me with some other communications, organization stuff with so she'll be sending out packets of PR and stuff like that like you said, like I'm just not really consistent about doing. And it's an interesting feeling to bring that in. It isn't ease for me yet, Laura. It's like, but I think that whole concept of expansion really does resonate more with doing what makes your little heart sing.
Well, and also it's like, how can you love the part of you that, you know, the administrative stuff is not what makes you sing, because it's that part of you that allows you to shine in this other area.
Well, that's true.
That only comes because you're not weighted down by the details of all of these things.
I'm not at all.
This is awesome. Okay, so I'm not. So now let's move on. Right? You have a business to run. You have books to write. You have things to do.
True.
It's like, how can you embrace it? Not, you know, as it's a fact, not a judgment about yourself.
Yeah, I love that. Well, tell us a little bit about what you got cooking, and then we'll just let people know how they can reach you.
Sure. So what I'm up to these days is I've been putting together these crystal ball healing recordings, which are totally awesome, so that you can actually listen to them from anywhere, and it's like you're in a room. And the way the bowls work is that they vibrate in your energetic body. So you think about our physical bodies right here, and then we have an energetic body. And so many times we know that we should take care of our physical body, but we're not necessarily clear on the tools we should use to clean our energetic body. And a lot of times illnesses and other things, they show up in our energetic body before they make their way into our physical body. So the crystal bowls vibrate at this level where really energy that's stuck can't stay. So I have this great recording that goes with the I'm Having It book. It's called I'm Having It. And so it's all about when you're in that spot where you can't imagine having it. You know, if you just lay down and in 20 minutes, you know, put the bowls on, you come out of that and suddenly the possibilities are open for you in life.
Oh, fun. So where can we find this?
Yeah, so you can find that on my website at Artful Healings. So that's with an s.com/free gift. And you just sign up for it and it will wing its way right to your inbox.
Thank you so much. Thanks for coming, Laura. It's always so much fun.
Thank you, Erica.
Yeah, have a beautiful day.
Goodbye.
Bye.